exciting, Roger, to be having a discussion with you this morning. And so, welcome here. So, I'm going to start out. We'll go back to the beginning. Where did you grow up? And give us a little bit about where you grew up and where God was in your life when you were a young child. So,
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, friends. All
yeah,
friends. I grew up in a area on the eastern shore of Nova Scotia. Not many of you guys would, well, some of you would know, Porter's Lake. My family is from along the east coast of Nova Scotia, from Nikamta to Ship Harbour to Owl's Head to Quispamsis, New Brunswick,
yeah. Roger, so kind of growing up in a more rural area, what did you have? Did you have any kind of experience with church or going to church or anything as a young child?
There was, I was baptized, United, I don't know where actually, I think it was Muscatava Harbor. I was an infant baptized in the United Church, but where I grew up there was no church per se for United people. There was an Anglican church there and a Catholic church, but there was none for the United folks. But really, I wasn't raised in that manner in the eyes of the church or in the eyes of God, for that matter.
Right. So you've shared before with me there was an incident, I'll call it that happened to you when you were in grade 4 and you were sent to a different school that kind of had implications on your faith journey for many decades. So just generally kind of tell me about what that was.
Yeah, it was my first introduction to really organized religion that I can remember. It wasn't, I won't go into great detail, but it wasn't fun. It was more on the horrendous side, actually. But it was grade 4, 5, 6. After being in a situation like that and being called certain names, like a heathen or whatever, as a teenager, I was a heathen. I was not very nice to my wife in particular, or my wife, my mother at that time, and mistrust of religion at that time, and mistrust of anything organized for that matter.
And we're going to move ahead a little bit here. So you and I actually had some fun talking about this, so we'll spare you all the details. But tell me, you were a really good athlete as a teenager. So tell me kind of what life was like as a teenager in kind of, eastern shore of Nova Scotia in a rural area.
In that area, there was only 3 things to do for guys. There was girls, sports, drinking, and it used to be mixed up. You didn't know which order that was, but that's how it was. To be very truthful, and there was a ton of us. There was all kinds of people my age, because we were baby boomers. It was not uncommon to have 8, 9 kids, each of the families on the road I grew up in. Just a funny story is how I kind of didn't want to live down there. I had a neighbor across the road who had 8 daughters and 1 boy, and his father come across the road, and I didn't want anything to do with this guy whatsoever. And he talked to my father as if I wasn't there and asked my father what my intent was in regards to staying in Porter's Lake, and that I could marry whatever daughter I wanted to, as long as that was his son-in-law. So that was I'm not going to be staying there, that's for sure.
Yeah, and in fact, that's a good segue. So what did you do after high school? You finished up. You went to university.
Yeah, post-secondary education, got into the engineering world, worked with Nova Scotia Power, and then I was, they weren't supposed to do that at that time. They weren't supposed to rob Peter to pay Paul, per se. MB Power individual come down and took a bunch of us out for supper and asked us if we wanted to go for a tour up here. At that time, we were afraid that we were going to be forced to go to Lingan, which is if you can picture absolute nothing with about minus 30 degrees in the wintertime and not even a tree out on this ragged point in Cape Breton, and we did not want to go there. It was longer to drive there than what it was to go here, for heaven's sake. So we made our decision very quickly, and there was a bunch of us come up.
Yeah, so you were actually working at Point Lepreau when it was just getting
Point Lepreau.
commissioned, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I was hired as a startup engineer. Worked at Lepreau for 14 years, I believe, before.
Yeah, and before we keep going, we want to circle back to one thing that happened, and I want to ask you about a personal relationship with a special lady there, and just how did you and Charlene meet?
I won't embarrass Charlene too much, but we met basically on a ball field. And she had told me at one time that she made it known to her mother that this was the guy she was going to marry. Now, she was young, but she knew what she wanted.
Yeah.
She knew who she wanted.
So you guys so you were dating and then you moved to New Brunswick, and did Charlene follow you here? Is that
we
kind of
were
how it worked?
dating off and on. Again, I wasn't a great person that way. Like I would talk to her, and we might go out, and then she wouldn't see me for months. So that's a true story. I wasn't following. I wasn't tracking right. It was like an old truck that's dog leg, and some of the old fellas would know what I mean, but yeah, I wasn't tracking right.
So here's the good news, and we'll let Roger and Charlene tell this story later. So the good news is that you eventually got married, and you actually the two of you had a milestone a couple of weeks ago, right? Share that with us.
Yeah, we celebrated our 40th anniversary on Sunday.
Excellent. So now Roger, I'm going to kind of move us ahead a little bit here. So you're married. You're living in New Brunswick. You started your family, and oldest child was born. And let's do a spiritual temperature check. Where was God in your life at this particular time?
God was. I knew there was something, but I wasn't quite sure what it was because I wasn't. I was never comfortable around church at that time, still wasn't. But I knew because being left-handed and being in the way of danger all the time, there was always somebody there. I had a few injuries when I was younger that didn't end up like this, but I knew there was something with me, or a presence with me, or something. But I wasn't sure about it.
Yeah, and Roger, at that point in time, you also, as you were starting your young family, one of your children had a serious health issue when they were younger.
My oldest, Jilly, who's waving, she, I think it was roughly around 20 months or something like that, that Jilly, one morning, we had a German Shepherd at that time. It was a wonderful dog, and it was really Jillian's dog. When she used to wake us up in the morning, one morning she didn't wake us up, and the dog grabbed us and growled and wanted to come, wanted to drag us, and down we went, and Julie was having a seizure. And that lasted right up until puberty. And then she had other illnesses show up after that.
Yeah. So basically, that was kind of the first experience with a family member and a serious health issue. So I'm going to move us ahead a few years to 1993. So again, been working at Lepreau there for 14 years or something like that, and you're still in really, you're in good physical shape.
Playing hockey, playing ball.
Yeah,
good
exactly.
shape. Yeah,
and,
big guy.
And then there was another really pivot point in your life, and that involved a vehicle accident.
Just a little car accident. But the guy, we were hit head on. I was driving my wife's very first car that she bought herself. This little Festiva, and this guy probably showing off for the girls that were in the car with him. You know, he just got his driver's license and he wasn't driving the way he should have. It wasn't high speed, but it was the way we hit. And there were no airbags in that car. As a matter of fact, the window shattered the next day. It was intact after the accident, but it hit that hard that the window fell out of the back of it while it was sitting in the driveway. And it wasn't long after that I started having problems with my left hand, my left leg. It would swell. And you go to specialists, and they thought it was something that it doesn't even exist in its name today, even though they operated on it back then. I was diagnosed after several weeks in the hospital. I think that was in October, I believe, and they did it by isolating these nerve sections that run down your body. My hand was swelling; it was turning purple, and like I said, weakness on the left side.
One of the things I have to interject, so one of the things I've learned about Roger and a few other people is that if they get into too much detail on anything medical that's happening, I might actually faint and pass out. So I'm going to spare you some of the details, but I've heard them all, and I have to tell Roger, don't tell me that when I'm driving the car, or I might pass out. So Roger, so that was the start that led to something else. So while that relatively minor surgery was going on, I'll spare you the details. The surgery went awry, and Roger ended up with a really undetected serious bleed into his chest cavity. So he ended up in a hospital in Halifax in a life-threatening situation. And we won't go into a lot of detail, but essentially, Roger, what happened was there was all this blood in your chest cavity, and it basically destroyed your 80% of your lung capability.
Yeah. What the problem with blood in your chest cavity is that it gels and it becomes like glue. Your lungs, they have the ability to expand, but they don't like weight on them, water or blood or anything like that, and it goes like glue. And the surgeon in Halifax, it was my mother-in-law actually took me to her family doctor and then sent me over to another hospital, and they saw this large mass, but they didn't know what it was. But the surgeon had described it as like putting balloons against the wall and then putting glue on them and then trying to get the glue off the balloons without damaging the balloons. And it left lesions and adhesions and fibrous material, I guess, if you want to call it, but more damage.
So Roger, tell us, as best you can. So now you went from this, really athletic, vital, person in their early 30s to now you're facing life with, with only 20% of your lung capacity, which means you had to be on oxygen 24/7. Tell me kind of what happened while you were there in the hospital.
That first year, maybe even into the second year, was very difficult. You have to grieve with what you lose, whether it's a loved one or a limb or a lifestyle or whatever it is, but you got to give it up, and it takes time sometimes to grieve that. Charlene would know that it was a difficult time for all of us because we had two kids. She was doing the paperwork. Charlene was doing the paperwork for our insurance, paying bills, that type of stuff was all an issue. And I was sick, and my daughter was sick, and we had an 8-year-old son as well.
And Roger, one thing that I want to just highlight, and this was, I think you were in the hospital, you had like I'll almost call it like a personality kind of swing there.
Actually, I was an introvert, very much introverted. I'd be the country boy that was in the corner, taking everything in at a party or anything like that, or a gathering. After the second open chest surgery, they're called a thoracotomy, and I don't want to make Richard sick, but basically it's one of the most painful surgeries you can have because it breaks ribs and all that kind of stuff, so it takes a long time to heal. But I lost track, Richard. What did you?
Well,
what
my
did you-
question was, while you were there, you kind of had a really,
Oh yes.
serious kind of.
After coming to from that and being alive, I literally bawled for, I don't know, 3 days, and didn't know why. Had no reason except for the fact that I'm alive and breathing. But you know, I had surgery before in St. John, but in that situation I was unconscious for most of it. But this time was different. When I stopped, I started talking, and I haven't shut up since. To be honest, you know, if I get the opportunity to talk, I'll talk.
Yeah.
You know.
So Roger, and again, let's just kind of check spiritual temperature. So you're, you know, I don't know if you can recall much about it. Where would you say
Still,
where you were at that time?
still didn't really have that real relationship. I'll call it a bond with God, but I knew something happens because I wasn't the person I was before. This would be at the point where it would seem like to Charlene that she was married to a different guy, because now she, instead of the quiet country boy, she had the country boy that talked a lot. Now, so
Yeah. So now we're going to make another leap forward here, probably about 20 years, in fact. And again, there's a lot of elements of that story that are really impactful, and we just, you know, we don't have enough time to kind of cover it. But Roger, over those years, you got involved in several. You got involved in, you know, mental health. In terms of supporting Canadian Mental Health Association, you were involved in many committees around locally, like delivery of health care, and you also survived a number of really serious health scares yourself. Like you had an intestinal blockage that almost took your life and stuff. And again, when you have such reduced lung capacity, every time you do a surgery, there's obviously a higher risk. So through that kind of span of years, again, just kind of checking your spiritual temperature, did you have kind of any, you know, what kind of sense did you have about your purpose or about God's existence or all that?
how far are you
So
up
we're almost to when we met you for the first time.
to? Okay. No, it was. I did have a run of bad illnesses, surgery prior to meeting
Yeah.
the folks. These folks initially, then all you folks, and we're not up to when
No,
I.
I'll just kind of take there. So again, this is a great story. That Charlene could have some input into as well. Anyway, Charlene had a coworker where she was working who was an active member at the harbor, and eventually, Charlene when we came to attended the harbor, we were at our old location, and through attending there, she got connected to Nancy and I, my wife Nancy and I, who were doing a life group in our home. So Charlene was a regular attender at that. Roger wasn't, and one evening we invited you and Charlene to just come to our place for dinner. That was the first time Roger and I met, and I've never asked you a lot about this, but I guess we didn't scare you off when we were talking about stuff. I think we mostly probably talked about engineering related stuff. And so Roger started attending our life groups. This would have been January of 2017. And Roger, again, you were kind of just sitting in our living room, and you were usually pretty quiet, but he was really actively observing what we were talking about. You know, we were studying from the Bible, and we were talking a lot about how do we apply this to our lives in practical ways. And then in the spring of 2017, Roger, you went in the hospital for surgery on your back.
Yep.
That was supposed to be fairly routine, and you were only going to be in there a few days. And again, this was another really pivotal event. And again, just give us a sense of the operation went awry. Basically, he had serious nerve damage in his lower back, and so Roger couldn't walk. But tell us a little bit about what it was like being in that hospital for an extended period. Primarily, what happened to the people in your life group and at your church at that time.
Okay. Just before that, just one little, not a funny thing, but I had a surgery one time that the doctor had come out and talked to Charlene about why he lived. He didn't understand why I did so well through the surgery. So somebody was with me at that time. He didn't understand it, the doctor. And this is a friend of mine, the surgeon. So I just wanted to touch that because I know that happened. He come out and talked to Charlene after surgery. Going back to what Richard asked me, I had back surgery. I think the guy did just a portion of it because everything else was still damaged on the other side it was spinal stenosis, what it's called. It left me with a dropped foot, and it left me on rehab, and it left me there for a long time.
In fact, it was over 100 days that Roger was in the hospital. Basically, he was supposed to be there 3 or 4, so it was long, extended, several months.
It was wild. Every time I go to the hospital, they want to keep me. I don't know why. It's a weird thing. That's why I don't like going to emergency departments. Apparently, I even fought that when I was unconscious. So.
Yeah. So while you were there, you had quite a few visitors.
Yep. The funniest thing was I had people coming that I didn't know. I had visitors from a life group that I had met, but I wasn't quite sure what they were talking about or how they even remember all that stuff because it didn't relate to who I was or what I was that I thought anyway. But Thanksgiving came along, and you're sitting in a hospital and you go through all these different. I've been there at times where I've missed birthdays, anniversaries, and I think even Christmas one year. I'm not quite sure, but this particular time, Charlene had come in, and so we were going to do. Have supper down in the cafeteria, and that was after the cafeteria wasn't serving any food anymore. So she said, "No, we're going to have a bite down there." And when I went down, I'm in a granny shirt. I might as well have a wardrobe of those different colors. But when I went down, these individuals that I didn't really know, the life group members, I didn't know them personally, really, were there. And they had a huge table set up, full Thanksgiving dinner. My mother-in-law, father-in-law were there. There was kids there. Lori's kids were there. I don't know who others' kids were there, if there's others, but I can't remember because I know I'm not to the married stage yet where I got a new daughter, but anyway.
So that was made quite an impression on you. The people that really didn't have a deep personal, or you didn't really have a deep personal relationship with, that made that.
Yeah, it had a huge impact on me that people from that side of the tracks, shall we say, the religion side and my side, it seemed like, geez, these people really care. They would give up time at home to come in the hospital and have Thanksgiving dinner with me. I didn't have a great, for myself. I loved my wife and kids, but not so much myself still. There were still things missing.
So so Roger, you eventually got out of the hospital. I remember we were there when you walked out, and determinedly, and so you and I kind of started basically meeting for coffee once a week. We still did our life groups and a life group, and you were there. We would kind of do another meeting through the week, and so there was definitely a change in the discussion because we would get together for coffee and we'd kind of talk about what was going on in our lives, but there was always a discussion about faith. And basically, I think because of our mutual engineering backgrounds, I would I would say we would talk very logically that there was a God, there was a creator of the universe, and he created you, Roger, and, he had a purpose for creating you, and that was really to glorify him. And, as we talked through this, we talked about Jesus and what it meant to follow him and make Jesus the authority in your life. And one day, as we were talking about that, I just said, I said this more than once, but I would ask this. I said, Roger, I said, I think you got this all mentally figured out. I said, I think you need to make a decision on whether you want to follow Jesus or not. Yeah, and be baptized and accept Jesus as your Savior. And his answer was?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And of course, being different, I wanted to do it in the Chris Francis River.
Yeah.
We had a river, so we did it, and 3 engineers sitting on trying to figure out how to keep my feet dry because I had special shoes, and it failed, of course.
We did. There was a bit, in my defense, there was a little bit of thinking about how we're going to get Roger out there because he still had to have his oxygen with him, and it was like, okay, we're going to immerse him. So I will say we had lots of muscle out there in case it was a slip.
Sean,
It wasn't going to be a problem picking you up out of the water.
Yeah.
But there was a little bit of logistical challenge to do that. So Roger, we got to really celebrate with you. I remember that day very vividly. So that was in the summer of 2018. So I'm going to...
Now, what year did you get married, Aria, sir? Wherever you were, sir. 2013. See,
yeah, so I skipped over that part.
Yeah, so I do have an not extended, she is my daughter.
Yeah.
And my granddaughter, you see her once in a while, Aria. She's been dancing in this church ever since her grandmother and her mother have been bringing her. She's been dancing. So I wanted to say that.
Yeah, good. No, good. It's obviously a
friend
positive
Duke.
thing to mention. So Roger, we're going to kind of. So this was about 3 years ago that you were baptized, and again, we'll spare some of the detail. But Roger actually had 2 pretty serious health interventions. One was I don't even remember what it was for. That you actually had kind of septic. Septic, and so there was a time for probably a 24-hour stretch where there was serious doubt about whether Roger was going to live. And then there was, we just don't have time to talk about that, but there were people praying with Roger at his bedside and, around the clock.
Well, Duke had come down and see me in church, my goodness. That's one of the problems I have from, I think,
your next one I'm going to talk about, so hold that thought for a second.
It's finding words, and the words that I'm finding are not the right words. So, but my friend Duke would come down from Fredericton at that time because I was really sick, and see me in the hospital. Sarah and my wife probably saved my life during that time because they weren't watching for this issue that came up, sepsis. And because they thought I was this lethargic old guy that laid in bed and did nothing at home.
So that was, again, kind of a very quick miraculous discovery. Again, the doctors, same thing. I don't know how he's still alive. That was one. So then the other thing that happened, again, that from a health perspective, you got diagnosed actually with neuroendocrine cancer. So Roger actually does have a cancer diagnosis that they're still trying to figure out what kind of treatment is there. That actually isn't the most serious thing that happened. So just as COVID was kind of kicking into gear last March, Roger had a fall, and he actually damaged his kidneys, and while the rest of us were kind of figuring out, hey, we can't go to the hospital because of COVID-19 restrictions, Roger ended up in the hospital, and he ended up on a ventilator.
Yeah.
For how long?
A
couple of weeks.
12 days on the ventilator, 4+ weeks on hypoxemia, and then the rest was sitting in a two-person room for 3+ months again.
Yeah, and at this time we couldn't even go visit, right? Because again, such restrictions of COVID, and again, just another. When Roger was on the ventilator, many people were praying for him, and again, is Roger going to live or not? And so,
it's been
a wild journey. And again, we're kind of hitting the high points. So, Roger, I want to kind of wrap this up. We had a great discussion yesterday. We were kind of thinking, Roger, what thoughts would you want to leave with people about, about where you are. It's been, and I'm going to frame it this way because we talked about this a lot. Um, do you have how would you describe, your journey and where you are now in terms of your
Well,
spiritual walk?
I, it's interesting because my first venture into this church was into a center, Nick Cole Center,
Right.
I think.
Yeah, it was.
And I was very comfortable there, and I love the music. I love the music. I can't deny it. I love that. I think it brings power to the Word of God, and I think He hears that and listens intently and amazingly. But I wanted to. We skipped over the cancer thing there. That was not a fun thing, by the way, guys. I didn't even remember if I had a checkup going into, because I got a checkup coming on again for this cancer thing. Because we got to make sure. I don't know if you ever say you're cancer free. I'm not quite sure how that works. But anyway, I won't regress, Richard. I won't scare you.
But Roger, just to that's actually a good example because I know every time you have another health scare, we talk about a purpose
Yeah.
in life. And, and
Yeah.
one of the things that I say to you and you readily say, I said, Roger, God obviously has a purpose for your life that I think there's so many interventions to keep you, frankly, to keep you alive through all the health challenges you've had.
Yeah, it's true. When I first started going to life groups as a member of the life group, I related to Paul. Now Saul and Paul. Now I didn't go out and kill a bunch of people or Christians or anything like that. And then pick them out because I don't think you guys are purple with pink polka dots or anything like that. So, but I had that feeling, that attachment to him because that road that after he shall I say converted, he had a rough go, no matter what he did. He had a rough go. Oh, that's better.
Yeah.
Wow. He had a rough go. And for me, I had a rough go my entire life as far as injuries, weird things happening, illnesses. My wife can tell you, my daughter-in-law can tell you. It's been a wild ride, and even after it became very hard, right after I got baptized. So that's that balance, evil versus good, whatever way you want it, that energy in the world. It seemed to me that it was trying to struggle with me because I got knocked down and picked myself back up. Sarah will tell you, I had fallen one time with her out on the deck, and she picked me up gave me this super wedgie and picked me up, and my legs were still kicking while I was the lights were out, but I was still kicking.
Yeah.
My wife will tell you that I had an argument with her the day that I fell about going to the hospital. I don't remember any of that. These guys saved my life again, and my wife saved my life in this process by taking me.
Yeah.
Like guys are terrible about going to the hospital or anything, and some girls, but guys are terrible.
So, So, Roger, one of the things that we talked about when we were discussing what we were going to do here, what are your closing thoughts you kind of want to leave people today that are going to be watching this video?
I feel more fulfilled and more comfortable within my own skin. I never felt comfortable in my own skin at times. It was hard. I met but staying positive and throughout your illness sometimes is difficult, and I know it's difficult for a lot of people to overcome that feeling of why me, but why not me? I had a situation one time, very quickly, Richard, I promise, that I get into trouble with a doctor, and I ended up in a room with this guy that had dementia, and I had no reason why she chose that, or why this doctor put me there, but I was there for him, not for me. And that's how I had to look at everything, that this is not for me, it's for him, it's for the big guy, and it's for somebody else. It's not for me. I still carry on today, trying to help the way I can, the best way I can. I'm still pushing myself forward, still trying to get to Stan Cassidy to learn how to drive with my hands, but I got to do a major build-up of the upper body because I got water wings instead of muscles now for upper arms. But my relationship with God is confirmed as strong. I believe He's in my corner. He's in my family's corner. He's in that little blonde that you see's corner. It's in everybody's corner. It's in my good friend Duke's corner. That man there is amazing in himself. He come down. He drove from Fredericton, come to church this morning. Guys,
nice.
you know.
Thank you for praying as well, Duke.
Yeah.
So I actually asked Roger, and this won't be a test for you. I'll do this. So I said, Roger, let's kind of come up with 3 points to summarize it. So I'm going to read these 3 points, and then I'm going to pray, and we're going to the 3 points, that you kind of as we talked to this. The first one was, the past is past. Don't dwell on it. Roger had so many times in his life he could have been bitter about all the stuff that happened, and that, as you said, the past is past. Don't dwell on it. Know that God has a purpose for your life, and I would say even when it's not very evident at the time what that purpose is. And the third one, live for today and be part of something that makes a difference in the world.
Yes. Go forward, not backward. Don't live in the past. What happened yesterday is yesterday. Live today. You don't know what's going to come tomorrow, because believe me, you could fall. Now, my daughter-in-law would say that I was probably sick before that because she's seen signs. She's a smart girl. But it's, live that day, live it. Try to help at least one person. I try to help one person each day if I can. If not, then at least look after yourself.
Yeah,
But be proactive.
for sure.